Hey, this is a petty politic back at it again with another video from Abby Phillips on the CNN News Night with Abby Phillips. We have another take, and we need to get at that table. So let's do it.
Not that I don't have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. If I think our country's in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it.
Trump, it seems, is testing the waters here, almost normalizing the next steps in this playbook for broader control. And if you're wondering just how Trump plans to carry all of this out legally, well, the White House is laying out the groundwork right now.
The president has the utmost authority here because he oversees federal law enforcement, which is supreme to state and local law enforcement. And all of these organized street gangs that are terrorizing these cities, that are dealing these drugs, that are trafficking in weapons, that are engaging in organized theft, armed robbery, carjacking, all of them are doing business with, at some level or another, the transnational narco-trafficking organizations. So these street crews are engaged in material support for terrorism, which is the core function of the federal government to defend and protect.
Now we see how he's going to do it. He's going to make it seem as though these gangs are affiliated with terrorist organizations. And once you say terrorist organizations, the federal government will come in. See, you have to be aware of how the National Guard comes in. The National Guard comes in for specific purposes. And one of those specific purposes has to do with terroristic threats or terroristic organization. This is how they're going to try to militarize or make it normal for us to see these kind of things on the street. You notice that Stephen Miller used the word supreme. The president only has several levers at his disposal. He can see if he can argue that there's some kind of insurrection that the state is allowing to happen. There's a guarantee clause too. The Constitution says the federal government must protect states against domestic violence if requested. It could be commander-in-chief powers where he could argue he's inherently authorized to use federal forces when national security or federal property is at risk. Federal supremacy clause in which state laws or governors oppose him. He could argue in court that federal authority overrides state resistance when enforcing federal law. And it could be precedent and public safety arguments. It could be historically, presidents have sent federal troops to enforce civil rights when states refused to, back when people could integrate, or black people were trying to integrate. I don't recall the exact decade or year. So he can say the courts don't automatically side with him, even if he makes these kind of arguments. But as you can see, that Stephen Miller is trying to say supreme authority, saying president has authority in which states do not.
Joining us now in our fifth seat tonight is CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elie Honig. He is also the author of the book When You Come at the King, which comes out next month. Elie, I have been dying to ask you about that very soundbite from Stephen Miller. I'm curious what you think about that. He is basically saying we can designate these street gangs as terrorists because they are providing material support for foreign entities, and use the military and use federal power for that reason.
Okay, so there's a lot going on here, but let's try to separate it into two buckets. First of all, there's the use of federal law enforcement assets, FBI, DEA, ATF. The president and DOJ can do what they want with those federal assets. If they want to deploy them into the cities, they can. Ideally, you would get together with the mayor and the police chief and do it cooperatively. I've been part of that from both the federal and the state side. That's the way it works best. But legally, he can put the FBI on the streets if he wants. He can put the DEA. We can talk about whether that's a good idea.
They are on the streets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and he can continue doing that. Then there's the question of the National Guard. Now, this is a little trickier. So far, Trump has deployed the National Guard in D.C. He's allowed to do that. He is the commander-in-chief. He is also in charge of the National Guard in D.C., and he has done it in California. That, too, was legal. That went up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They found that he had properly invoked the Insurrection Act, not that there was a rebellion, but under this broader catch-all that's as if necessary to enforce federal laws. But I do want to point this out. If Trump thinks he's going to be able to deploy the National Guard in Illinois, in Maryland, in New York. It's going to be much harder legally because in California, the hook he used was the ongoing protests, which at times had turned violent and into riots. If that's not happening, I don't know whether just citing high crime rates is going to be enough, according to the court. So he's had success so far with the National Guard in D.C. and California, much tougher legal terrain in the other states.
So for the second time in 2 days, Trump has brought up the dictator word. Let me just play what he said today.
So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime.
Are people saying, Scott, that they'd like to have a dictator if it stops crime?
Well, I think people are certainly saying that they'd like to stop crime, whatever you call it. I saw a Harvard-Harris poll today. I think 54% of Americans thought what he did in Washington, D.C. was justified. 56% of Americans think crime is a major problem in
Did you say
larger
34% of Americans?
No, 54%.
54%.
56% thought major crime in large cities was a problem. So he seems to have some political support for this. And look, I mean, it's kind of a bread and butter political issue that gets debated all the time. And what he has done here is he's put himself on the side of, I want to, do what I can do. And even if I have to test my authority to stop crime, and my political opponents are now out having a meltdown because I guess they want to support the ongoing crimes in their blue cities. So he's created a real political bright line between the two parties. However it works out legally, it's going to work for him politically.
Well, it's a bright line. I think that people want crime to go down. No one wants crime in their communities. That is clear. We saw that. We've seen that over the last few months. People don't want the National Guard in their communities. That's completely different. And just as you pointed out, there are other mechanisms for the federal government to come in and to help communities. And that is the FBI and DEA and providing grants to educational grants so that we are providing educational services to young youth to get them off the streets. There are things like that that the federal government can do. And that will act.
Well, the problem is that they're not taking them up on some of these ideas and some of these grants. They see there's crime there. There's issues there, we get that. But in conjunction with FBI, CIA, those kind of people, in conjunction with those people, but not bringing the military, not bringing the National Guard, because that's supposed to be protecting our total country, the borders, national security, terrorists. And now if this person, Stephen Miller, gets to label regular citizens as terrorists, we're going to have hell on these streets. It's going to be them against the National Guard, and it's not going to end well. Because the next thing you're going to know is, oh, everybody has to be in the house by 10 o'clock. Oh, everybody has to be here at 10 o'clock. Oh, everybody has to do this, that, and the third. Military occupation, we have those in other countries. Nobody likes it there. Nobody's going to like it here. But we hear this talk. We hear this drum beat. It's very low, but that drum beat is coming. We're going to start labeling regular, ordinary citizens, gang members, as terrorists. And then we're going to have the excuse to come in and go to every city. People are not going to like that.
Actually help in the long term reduce crime. It was already reducing crime in the Biden administration. Biden didn't go out and put the National Guard everywhere, but you know what? They did have a strategy to bring down crime, and crime started to go down. And what's going to happen here is in 1 month, and once the National Guard leaves, crime will go up again. And so people don't want.
You're saying the Guard does bring down crime?
Well, right now they're arresting everyone and anyone and trying to figure out what charges they're going to bring. They're trying to arrest everyone and everyone, trying to figure out what charges they can bring
not
against
everyone,
them.
Criminals.
Well, they're not arresting everyone, in fact. And I want to just say, in regard to that public opinion polling that you cited, I totally understand that sentiment because as someone who was a Democrat, I'm an independent now, I was incredibly frustrated living in Los Angeles, being gaslit about the reality of the disorder, the crime that was happening. So yeah, that's going to lead to people who are looking for solutions. And if the Democratic Party is gaslighting you and telling you, no, crime's getting better, they're going to be more open to some of the shenanigans happening with Trump. The problem with Trump, though, is I think crime is the cover story. I think this is a power grab. And the reason why I say that is because look at the specific examples of crime that he allegedly wants to go after. I mean, just recently, his FBI did a sting operation in Las Vegas, and they managed to catch, through this sting operation, 8 separate pedophiles that were trying to have sex with minors, okay? One of those pedophiles is an Israeli government official who his government allowed to fly back to Israel after he had been charged in that sting operation for using technology to lure a minor for sex. And when it comes to the immigration issue, he loves to go after the undocumented immigrants, but not the employers employing the undocumented immigrants.
You mentioned that Trump, you described it as a cover story, but I think it's also worth noting that Trump has been talking about doing this for a long time. I mean, this is back in the campaign. And the context here is not crime in American cities. The context here are his political enemies, Democrats. This is what he's talking about. Watch.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
So I don't like the use of these buzzwords that get people riled up. There are no more left lunatics as opposed to right lunatics. There's right lunatics and then there's left lunatics. And neither one of us are neither one of those are in abundance. And we still don't want to see this going on in our cities.
He keeps talking about using the military domestically against American citizens. And we can parse all the ways that he can try to do this with this statute or that statute, but the broad principle is that the Constitution makes it much more difficult to do that for a reason, right? So why does he keep bringing that up?
Doesn't get caught up in the nuance that you're bringing forward. What they care about, we haven't even mentioned war zones like downtown San Francisco after 7 o'clock where I work, or Hollywood or Los Angeles where I work 2 months of the year. They are war zones. You can't walk outside at night, period. I don't give a damn if it's the Army, the National Guard, the FBI. I couldn't care less, and I can guarantee you 80, 90, 100% of the people there don't care either. They just want to walk outside.
I understand that people do want safety. I mean, there's no question about
Safety?
that, right?
You
people
get
want
beaten
safety.
to a pulp in broad daylight
people
in
want
LA.
safety and security, but I don't think it's true that people don't care whether or not the U.S. military is
put being pounded
on
with a hammer
fellow
in
citizens.
broad
I mean,
daylight.
I think that's an important American principle that has its roots all the way to this country's founding. And it's also because the military serves a role to protect Americans, not to be used against Americans.
Exactly.
You keep saying used against Americans. What kind of Americans do you mean? The ones that are murdering us?
It doesn't matter whether they're criminals or non-criminals. It's still using the military weaponizing the military against the United States citizens. And the military National Guard is not supposed to be used like that. That's the whole point. Once we start using that against the regular ordinary citizens, like they did in LA, like DC doing right now, everything has been disrupted, or everything becomes disrupted. Why not make other arrangements besides the National Guard? Okay, and I get it. People are frustrated. They hate seeing crime. They hate seeing these stats being the way they are. But that's the reason why we have governors, so you can start to govern. So all states have to start to govern. According to records and statistics, some of the red states too, the red states that Trump refuses to go to, those states that he refused to go to, hasn't said anything about those red states. They have high numbers, like in Tennessee, like in Ohio. They have high numbers, crime rates too. So he doesn't want to go in there and do that. The reason why everybody is saying that he's using this as a political weapon is because he's only targeting Democratic states. And the other states, their crime rates are just as bad.
Carjacking us, raping us, terrorizing our cities. I mean, you're saying like he's creating an actual war against American citizens when what he's actually creating is a war against criminals. And by the way, illegal aliens who they are rounding up by the bucket load.
I want to let Ellie speak, but I mean, look, I'm not saying he's creating a war against American citizens, but I also think that, first of all, when you have, large amounts of armed military personnel on the streets, they're going to encounter a lot of Americans who've done nothing wrong. And those Americans have rights, as do the Americans who have done things wrong, just to be clear. But Americans who have done nothing wrong will get caught up and have gotten caught up in this. Go ahead.
Not to be overly idealistic about all this, but there's a way this can work, and I've seen it. And Soshi, I'm sure you have too. And
See, he's a cooler head. Let's listen to cooler heads prevail. Let's get some cooperation. Let's get some collaboration. I'm all for it.
your experience at DOJ, there have been many. When I was in Jersey, we had a crime problem in Newark, and what did we do? We teamed up the Newark PD with the feds, and we surged into Newark, and it made a big difference. And let me just say, as a parent who's about to have 2 kids in college in the city of Chicago, I want as many uniforms out there as possible. And frankly, I don't really care where they're coming from, but both sides need to do better. I mean, there's a clip today of the mayor of Chicago, who I think very highly of, stumbling all over himself when he's asked point blank, is it better to have people on the streets, to have uniformed people on the streets? And he goes, we need housing. That's a different issue. He needs to say, yes, but we need to work with. And the feds need to cut it out. Donald Trump needs to knock it off with that sort of over-the-top rhetoric. There's a way to do this constructively. I saw it done during the Bush administration. I saw, Scott, you were part of. I saw it done during the Obama administration. All it takes is let's get past the craziness, the rhetoric. If you work together, you can do it. I've seen it. You've seen it.
And part of it is also that Democrats are waiting for Trump to come into their cities and bring the National Guard. And that is not a good solution, and it is not going to end well for anybody.
Yes, I agree. You need to do something. You cannot sit there and wait for him to invade your state. You need to do some creative policing, if that's a word. You need to do some kind of creative policing. We cannot sit back and wait for him to invade your city. Join with the FBI. Join with the some other police force to see if you guys can do what the National Guard will be doing. Do that before Trump gets there and invades your city. Do something.
If you're a Democratic mayor or a governor, what you should be doing is requesting federal, whether it is the FBI, DEA, any sort of assistance that is not the National Guard, that will actually work for your law enforcement and not
I do think
bring in the National
that would
Guard.
be, sure, but Donald Trump was, just as an example, invited to come to Baltimore.
Wait a minute, hold on. Didn't ICE become one of the biggest police forces in the United States? Then why not have ICE go along with you guys? Maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Maybe find some illegal aliens along the way and be able to do some policing. I don't know. I'm not a police person. All I'm saying is that's a big force, that ICE force, and maybe you need to take that in and start doing some invading in some neighborhoods and get some people straight. Confiscate some guns. Just do something. Instead of just sitting there saying, I don't want him to come in my state, and then your state is still bad. Okay? No.
Or by the governor, he refused. He turned it down because he said that it was some kind of political trap, even though Baltimore is a great place for the president to see what's going on, because they have done some things, including gotten tougher on crime, and when it comes to juvenile crime in particular, that have worked. But Trump refuses. So, is it politics?
Well, of course politics is going on here. You said that they should be asking for federal resources, but that would be an admission that they have lost control of their cities.
That's
so
not losing
Brandon
control.
Johnson.
The
mayor of DC asked for federal resources too. She was trying.
But Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, said, "I don't want more police," and he even said today, "We don't even want to put."
But this is what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, the Democrats should think about potentially asking for more resources. What I'll say here is that,
with you, but they won't.
But it's also not handing over the entire city to the federal government. What happens is that the mayor and the local law enforcement should be in charge, and they should have the federal law enforcement supplement and provide training as needed. It shouldn't be that the National Guard and federal law enforcement should take over a city that they do not understand, that they do not know, that the community doesn't understand. That just leads to chaos.
When you heard Stephen Miller talking about this, he didn't say we want to work with local law enforcement. He said we are supreme and we can do whatever we want. So that really tells you everything you need to know about the approach that they're taking.
That's the problem. It's
a little bit
approached in an adversarial way, as opposed to we care about this crime issue and we want to make the city safer. That's the problem.
Well, that makes sense to me. They're just trying to approach it in an adversarial way, as in I am the supreme being. I am the person that's in charge. I know what's best. So I'm going to come in and run rawhide over all the people, all the other federal agencies, all the other agencies that are in that state. Instead of cooperating with that state, instead of doing some kind of collaboration, they want to come in and run everything. instead of don't know the gangs, don't know the area, don't know the people, don't know the atmosphere, don't know anything. They just want to come in. This is what we're trying to say. We're trying to say you need to play second chair, let regular police enforcement do their job, put ICE in there. That'll put fear in a lot of people too. I mean, and then do monthly sweeps. I don't know.